How did you survive your final destination moment? When I was around 7, I almost fell into the septic system in my yard. The access point was opened and I didn't see it until my leg was dangling into a pit of number 2. The event scared me so badly that for at least 2 months I didn't go into my yard. I was working at Walmart on the maintenance crew overnight. There was a blocked drain near the deli and I had to dump some clog remover into it. No big deal. I walked up and found that someone had jammed a wet floor sign into the drain gate. So I yanked it out, didn't know if the clog remover would bleach it or something, and in pulling out the sign, I also moved the drain cover. I dumped in about a gallon of the stuff, that's what they told me to do, and I figured that was that. I took off my gloves, tossed them into the trash can near me, and then I noticed the grate was shifted. With a lack of sense, because I was a teenager after all, I put my hand into the water and moved the drain back into place. No big deal, I just saved everyone's loose change from falling into the drain. I walked into the back and was doing something else for a bit and kind of noticed my hand was sort of itchy. I have eczema, so being itchy was nothing new. I went on to grab a broom with the hand that I'd put in the drain and the broom stung my hand. I look all over the broom and nothing was sharp, so I took a look at my hand. My hand was turning deep red all over. My nails were deep yellow and floppy. I was covered in red bumps and there was a black patch forming on top of my hand. I thought it was some massive allergic reaction, so I took some Benadryl and went to find the manager. The manager was nowhere to be found. He was an alcoholic who would sleep off hangovers in the meeting room, so I went to a friend of mine that was also on the maintenance team. He screamed. Not the reaction I was hoping for. He damn near dragged me into the bathroom and told me to turn on the faucet and keep my hand under it, so I did. He runs out like he's on a mission, then comes back in with the manager. I chat with the manager for a bit and get sent to the hospital. Apparently, it wasn't an allergic reaction. The doctor told me it was the natural reaction of someone's skin to industrial-strength drain cleaner. My skin was developing a massive chemical burn, and if I'd let it go or not noticed it as soon as I did, it could have burned through my skin, into my blood, and laid me out. I fell almost 200 feet off a mountain in Colorado. The narrator would like to note that the individual who submitted this very short story is called Mountain Lover. I do wonder if they created that profile name before or after their life and death moment. I suppose we'll never know. I was around 11 months old at the time and was always a very playful baby. My mum was cooking something up in the kitchen and let me play in my crib. I was very giggly and would make noises, so my mum knew I was okay. However, at a certain point, she stopped hearing me make noises completely, and I previously took a nap, so she knew something was wrong. She found me not breathing in the crib and immediately dialed 911 and tried mouth-to-mouth, but nothing was working. She felt like the ambulance was taking too long, so she picked me up and ran down the stairs of our apartment complex to look for help. Coincidentally, there was a police officer just about to leave, responding from a call, and he noticed my mother bawling her eyes out. The police officer rushed us to the sick kids hospital here in Toronto, and luckily we lived 10 minutes from the hospital. The ER was able to revive me within 5 minutes. The ER team later told my mum if it was 10 minutes longer, I would have died. It still brings chills when I think about the story. Probably the most frightful thing for any parent to go through. Worked in a 120-year-old building where the elevators were built to be operated by people, not computers. They put in push buttons, but there were always people there working on the elevators. They never seemed to work right over all the years I've worked there. I can't remember a time when they weren't trying to fix at least one of the elevators. One day I was riding an elevator down and it suddenly just stopped. Sat there for 10 seconds or so, then it jumped about 3 or 4 feet and instantly dropped about a floor. It then slowed back to normal speed and stopped again. The weird thing was that nobody screamed, nobody talked, and nobody made any sounds. We all pretty much just assumed we were about to fall to our deaths. But then there was a weird electric feeling as we just waited to see what would happen. Waiting, not moving, total silence. Instead of plummeting us to our deaths, the elevator then just resumed its normal course to the next floor and opened. I hit a deer while in a VW Rabbit. Deer head smashed through the windshield and pushed the glass into within a few inches of my face. Only the layer of plastic designed to keep the windshield together kept it from decapitating me. My face was filled with broken glass, which is really awful because you can't pick it out, and when you try to brush it off, it drives all the little slivers deeper in and they hurt more. I'm convinced I still have glass shards in my face that will remain there forever. In a final act of revenge, the deer spun around and its butt simultaneously busted my back window and left Doody on the rear seat. I got hit in the head with a lawn dart once. It just bounced off. I was 40 years old when I did this. Stupid, I know, but I'm still here to tell you not to do it. I live next to train tracks in the city of Houston. One very foggy winter night, I went for a walk on the train tracks. I heard a distant train and saw the glow of the light. I turned around and started running back towards home. The tracks are lined with tall weeds, meaning that there was no real area to jump off into without getting dirty, scratched, and wet. I was going for the break through the weeds, where I got onto the tracks. The train was closer than I thought due to the fog. It was getting louder and the light was brighter. The horn was blaring. I was running and I tripped. I fell flat between the rails. I jumped up, jumped into the weeds, and the train shot past, horn screaming. With some presence of mind, I marked the spot where I was with a chunk of wood. I got up after the train passed, went home, got a flashlight, and came back to my marked spot. After a bit of searching, I found my glasses in the rocks between the rails. I never told my wife or my boys about my misadventure. I want you to quit tomorrow and look for a job at the library. Books can't kill you. Signed, your concerned mother. As someone who works in the library, I'd beg to differ. The 700 pages are just murder waiting to happen. I was doing one of those assault course things that we all do as a child. Harness and safety gear on, as we all do. I must have been around 11 or 12. Headed up on the rock wall and had to leap onto some sort of pole thing that had a platform on it from the top of the wall. Anyway, I'm on this platform, and next I have to head across the monkey bars to finish the course. So I jump across onto the bars when suddenly the harness snapped. I was essentially about 50 feet from the ground and impending death, so I had to get to the end of the monkey bars. Luckily I did, and I made it to the bottom unscathed but shaken up. In short, I'm Spider-Man. Also, I'm told that when I was born and flying out of my mother's ladyhood, I was about to fall and land on my head and my dad actually caught me. I cannot confirm whether or not this is true as I can't remember it. So it kinda just seems like the universe just sort of wants this commenter to die by falling from a great height. Take note of this, author, and don't let me go on a cable car with you anytime soon. When I was 15, my mum was driving me to school, and since it was rather early in the morning, she fell asleep at the wheel for a second. The road in question had no curb, and to make matters worse, it was right beside a salt marsh. Needless to say, water almost up to the bottom of the windows, which we got out of. To make matters even worse, I don't like being wet. It was not a good day. Alright, let's talk about my 2011, shall we? First, I was walking to school. Just got a text with some bad news from a friend. Distracted, I looked up and saw a car slowing to a stop at a crosswalk. I did not check to see if she saw me. She did not. As I stepped out, she slammed into me, pushing me into oncoming traffic, and due to perfect timing, she pushed me between two cars as they passed, and I managed to awkwardly dance out of death's way. Much crying on both of our parts ensued. The second event was when I got a moped. It was windy as frick in Hawaii, and I'm not experienced at all at moped riding. I was coming home from work and a huge gust of wind caught me off guard. I overcorrected and ended up tipping over while going forward, again almost getting caught under the wheels of an oncoming car. Luckily, they stopped right a few inches short, and my moped kept going right into someone's front lawn. Much crying ensued. The third was when my fiancé came over to visit during the Christmas break. It had been very windy for the previous week, and on Christmas Day we were walking around in the military park down by Waikiki. We stopped for a few minutes to look at this plant and exchanged to each other how it looked like the top of an enormous onion. We continued walking and suddenly there was this horrible creaking. I will never forget that sound, this inexorable, monstrous death rattle. We both looked up at the huge tree above us for falling branches. Nope, no falling branches. The entire fricking tree is tipping over directly onto us. I felt my fiancé bolt from my side and immediately followed him. He has better situational awareness, and when I felt him run, I was like, crap, better run too. We could feel the leaves brushing us as we fled. Had we not stopped to look at the plant, we would have been too far under the tree to make it out. A huge branch fell just where we had been standing. The author at this point says that there was much furious effing, but I'm not sure whether they meant they were swearing or doing the deed, so that's up to you, listeners. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. This didn't happen to me, but it almost killed my best friend. When I was in 8th grade, my buddies and I were messing around after we'd just finished school. We found this enormous exercise ball that was shaped like a large pill. Anyway, it was really fun to dropkick this sucker to each other in the gym while a large amount of small children run around. We were already setting up a good situation, right? Anyway, we were having fun kicking it around and it was my turn to pass it to someone. I grabbed it and kicked the living crap out of it. It sailed high enough to scrape the ceiling of the gym, and we were watching the trajectory down when all of a sudden, I spotted my friend who was walking away from me after I'd kicked it. I yelled at him to watch out, but it was too late and the ball hit him on the top of the head slightly to the side. I stood in horror as I watched his ear touch his right shoulder, and this was all his neck bending, mind you. His shoulder hadn't moved an inch. Luckily, he didn't die or get paralyzed, and to this day we're still good friends. And sometimes he says the vertebrae pop in his neck if he bends it too far to that side. I'll preface this story by saying that I'm a triplet and it's more my brother's story than mine. My brothers and I are fairly good skiers, and this year our family went on vacation to Snowbird, Utah to ski. We're able to pretty much handle the entire mountain, including all of the tree skiing and hardest slopes. Well, our parents, who aren't as confident taking risks while skiing, usually let us go off on our own, and we go to do all the crazy stuff that we want. If anyone here knows how it is skiing out west, they'll understand how easy it is to ski down the mountain out of bounds and get to areas where you're just like, crap, there's no way I can get down. So, at the top of the mountain, we see some people who look like pretty nice skiers start out across the mountain through the trees. Of course, our teenage invincibility perspective took over, and we were soon following these people further and further from the trails. Eventually, these people find a reasonably skiable area and head down, but being the idiots we are, we continue on a small narrow path across the mountain. As we got a bit further, we finally come to the realization that, crap, we're screwed, since we can't go back and the only way down was literally the steepest slope combined with natural obstacles, tree roots, rocks, etc., all ending in a 15 to 25 foot drop off a cliff. My one brother makes it down through a combination of sliding, skidding, and sheer determination not to fall, but to make matters worse, my other brother, before even going down, falls and his boots come out of his skis. This is where the idiot has his near-death experience as he tries to put his skis back on this steep slope. At this moment, some really chill dude skis in expertly and goes, "Hey, what's good guys, trying to catch some cliff?" To which my brother replies sarcastically, "That was the plan." Not showing his brightest moment and emboldened by this bro skier, he tries to stomp his left boot back into his ski, causing him to overbalance, and I mean the next part literally, fall head over heels down the mountain. My first reaction was, oh crap, my brother just fricking died and I'm stuck at the top of this stupid ski slope. Surprisingly, other than some bruises, he seemed to be okay, but this left me at the top with all of his ski stuff to get down. I managed to make it all the way down to the cliff drop, bigger than any other I'd attempted previously. By this time, we had a small crowd of spectators in the middle of the trail that the cliff shot out onto. With only this last bit, and in front of this crowd, not wanting to look like a scrub, I propelled myself forward screaming, "For Narnia," and went off the edge. Needless to say, despite my heroic battle cry, I leaned too far forward and did an impromptu front flip, crash landing into a snowbank. Luckily, the snowbank was so soft, so I didn't get hurt, and of course, I tried to play it off as intentional. Unfortunately, this experience only increased our confidence that we would never get hurt, and we continued skiing aggressively for the rest of the vacation. By the way, don't question the "For Narnia" cry, as it was the first thing that came to mind. I think everyone who's gone beyond beginner level of skiing or snowboarding has experienced something that at least seems like a near-death experience before. The narrator too has accidentally flown over his fair share of cliffs and emerged miraculously unharmed. When I was going to school out of town, I had about a 2-hour commute from home to school, straight shot on the interstate. I was coming home one weekend for a show and grabbed some fast food for the road, popped in a CD and enjoyed the ride. About 2 weeks before this trip, I bought my first car, so I was stoked to drive anywhere. I was about halfway through my ride when I suddenly woke up to the rumble strips on the road. Next thing I know, the car fishtails and flips off the road and on the side of a hill. It lands on the driver's side and I managed to climb out of the car from the passenger window, because the windows still worked, and escaped while the car was smoking and completely effed. I laid on the grass until someone stopped by, calling 911, and I went to the hospital. Somehow I walked away with only a few stitches in my arm. Once, my girlfriend asked if I thought a friend of hers was pretty. I said yes. Oof. A woman decided to text while going 75 to 80 miles per hour on the interstate and almost mowed me down. She then gave me the finger. That's the third time this month I've been in a car that almost got hit because the other driver was messing with their phone. I'm 16 and I got my license last week. I'm a decent driver who doesn't make dangerous decisions, and I don't want to worry about dying the next time I'm on the road because you just had to get that text or email or call out. Unless you're calling 911 because you're dying, put down your fricking phones. Oh, I have two. When I was a kid, my friend pulled out his BB gun, pointed it at my forehead about 2 inches away and pulled the trigger. Nothing. Then he pointed it at the ceiling and pulled the trigger again. That time it discharged. I'm not an expert on BB guns, but I think it would have penetrated my skull. Then in college, my girlfriend and I were driving in an unfamiliar city after dark. We were both looking at a map and drifted out onto a red light. We got plowed into by a Ford Super Duty towing a boat going 40 to 50 miles an hour, hitting our front driver's side quarter panel and sending both vehicles on opposite directions. If we'd been going 2 miles per hour faster, it would have impacted my door and undoubtedly killed me. I was 15 or 16 and went to a pool with my friend. I don't know how to swim and told him over and over again. He said, don't worry, he's actually trained, so he's got me. So my idiot self jumped into the 6-foot deep end. I was flapping around while he just stood there. I went all the way down and then pushed myself up, slowly moved to a corner and got out. Turns out he didn't know how to swim. When I was 10, we lived beside train tracks, and for some reason I was allowed to walk on them because the train only came once a day. Great parenting. My friend and I looked behind us one day to see the train coming around the bend. There was nowhere to jump off the tracks because of high rock ledges on each side. I took off running, leaving my friend behind, and made it to a spot just ahead with a drop-off into a rocky ravine. I jumped in and my friend came after. We weren't hurt, but I'll never forget seeing the front of the train directly behind me. I didn't tell my parents until I was about 35. I drowned in a wading pool when I was 12. My neighbor pulled me out, held me upside down to drain the water out of my lungs, and got me breathing again. I don't remember any of it, but my mum told me about it afterwards. I used to work in a computer shop. It was a mum-and-pop computer store that sold custom-built machines and repaired PCs. 2 occasions come to mind. First, I was holding a motherboard in one hand and the power switch for the PC in the other. I pushed the power button with my right thumb and must have been touching some part of it that screamed conductive, because the next thing I knew, every muscle in my arms and torso were clenched like it's minus 80 degrees and the motherboard is smoking. Some sort of fuse must have popped somewhere because as quick as it happened, it was over, and nothing worked anymore. To this day, when I smell burning electronics, my chest twinges. Second, much like the first, only this time involving a faulty power strip. I have my left hand over the center of the strip as I'm unplugging something with my right. Next thing I know, the center of my left hand feels like the solar side of Mercury on a summer's day, and my right hand no longer wants to cooperate with commands. Again, bless you fuses, because I am able to forcibly eject the offending power strip across the room with nothing more than an utterance of obscenities. While writing this, remembering a third time where, as a child, I had a chain, much like those used to attach pens to desks, inside banks, except each little bearing was 3 times larger. I was possessed with the notion that lowering one end of it into the open socket of a plugged-in lamp might be a good idea. Fortunately, I let go of the chain at the last moment and just let it drop. The entire length of the chain lit up in a blue that can only be described as an electric blue, but still is not given homage by the most detailed video game. In that briefest of moments, I smelled the universe. Creation itself was laid bare for my olfactory senses. If you can get high off ozone, I did it that night. The fact that it shorted out half the house and I had to explain to my dad what happened was a minor after effect in my memory. It would seem electricity is my arch nemesis. I've had 2 cars die to the point of needing replacement due to severe electrical problems. If electricity is my mutant power now, I fear I'm doing it terribly wrong. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.